Hi guys, I am so happy to be back doing my videos again for the Jameson journey. A lot of you know that I just had a baby, little Susie, about 2 months ago. And I was doing all of these videos wanting to kind of get the word out more about mental health, OCD specifically because it's something that I struggle with, anxiety, depression as well. And then I found out that I was pregnant and the first trimester was just really exhausting. I was really tired, so I kind of stopped making videos for the time being. And now that I feel like I'm finally in a groove with Susie, I am back. And of course, I want to do my first video to tell you guys a little bit about my postpartum journey, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. I'm gonna do this in a 2-part series. So the first part, I'm just gonna tell you about my postpartum journey and what I've gone through. And then the second video I'm gonna explain some resources that I used, some tips, some tricks, some things that can help you if you are in postpartum or you're planning to be postpartum. So we'll get started. I wanna tell you guys a little bit about my birth story. So Susie was born 2 weeks early. I had preeclampsia. That is kind of where you have high blood pressure. So I had a lot of swelling, probably about 50 pounds in water weight just on my body. It was a lot. So I had preeclampsia. I went into the triage a couple of times. They sent me home. They said, "You're fine." Finally, my doctor said, "You know what? No, your blood pressure's too high. We're going to induce you." That was on a Wednesday night. So we go in Wednesday night, we check in about 8 p.m. And they start doing all of the induction process. So the first one is a pill that they put in every 4 hours. I think there's 4 doses of it. And usually that starts to get you dilated. I didn't dilate from that. Then they tried the balloon. He couldn't even get the balloon in me. I really didn't want to do a C-section. My heart was really to have her naturally, but obviously I had to, keep in mind what was the best for both of us to keep us safe. He did offer, he said, let's just do a C-section. And I asked, is there anything else we can do? I had been praying about it. And he said, well, we could try Pitocin, but it probably won't work because none of the other things have worked. And I said, well, let's just give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I will do a C-section, okay? So he said, okay, that's fine. So we started Pitocin. He said, I'll be back in 3 hours. And so he came back in 3 hours and I was dilated to a 5, which was really exciting. And he told me he did not expect it. He was expecting to come back and do a C-section. So he was excited for me that I could have her naturally. And so that progressed kind of through the day. That was on Friday. So we went in Wednesday night. All Thursday we tried. Friday they started the Pitocin, and then Friday all day I was in labor. The start of labor. And then right around 10, 11 at night, she said I was getting really close. And it was really cool because the same nurse that had been my night nurse every night, she had been there every night, and I really wanted her to be there for the birth, but she was off of shift at 1 a.m. on Saturday. So it was Friday at midnight, and she said I could start pushing. And so actually it was about 12:30. She said I could start pushing. So I started pushing, and she just looked at me and she said, "I'm sorry, but I probably won't be here for the birth because I'm off at 1 o'clock, which I looked at the clock and I saw was in 30 minutes. And all I could think was, oh my gosh, I have to do this for longer than 30 minutes. Like, I cannot do this. So, I just pushed really hard, and all of a sudden she was like, oh my gosh, she is like coming. I have to get the OB. So she runs, my OB was 20 minutes away. They got my OB. It was storming that night, or an OB. It was storming that night. And I am not joking, you guys. Right as Susie came out, the loudest strike of thunder and lightning I have ever heard. It literally shook the building, and she was born at exactly 1 a.m. And so the nurse was like, wow, you really must have wanted me to see Susie be born. And I was like, I really did. Enough to have her born exactly at 1 a.m. when you're supposed to be off shift. So that's a little bit about my birth story. My mom wasn't allowed in the room, unfortunately, because it was after hours. So only Brad was there, my husband. And it was really just a peaceful time. Over those 3 days, my mom was there, Brad was there, we read scripture, we watched TV. When I was feeling contractions, we started listening to worship music. We were in a lot of prayer that I could have her naturally. And so ultimately it was a beautiful experience. Sometimes I feel guilty saying that because I feel like a lot of people have traumatic birth experiences, but I also want women to know that there can be really positive and happy birth experiences. And so overall, it was an amazing experience and something that I just look back on and think, wow, I was so blessed. So that was the birth. Then after we got her into our room, they tested her, and unfortunately her glucose levels were too low. So they had to take her into the NICU nursery. And so that was really hard on my heart, but I was on magnesium for the preeclampsia. And so I was actually way out of it. So I pretty much slept for like 24 hours. I would go to some of her feedings, but I couldn't even hold her. I couldn't even stand up on my own just because the medicine was making me really groggy. And so that was hard, but then finally I got off the medicine and then she got cleared to come with us. And actually that same day they said that we were both cleared to go home. So we came home. I remember vividly, it was raining and I was laying in the bed and Susie was in her bassinet and I was staring out at the rain and I was thinking, wow, this is great. Like I thought I was gonna feel anxious or scared, but I feel great, I feel fine. And I felt like everything was good. And then I woke up the next day. Brad, unfortunately, was supposed to be home with me for 3 days and he had to go back to work because his boss had gotten COVID. So first day home with the baby, I was all by myself. And I pretty much felt like I was gonna have a panic attack. I had major anxiety. I felt constantly scared. I literally cried all day long, couldn't stop, would call Brad probably 5 times a day, crying my eyes out. And I was like, what is going on? I was like, I don't feel attached to Susie. I don't feel this bond that everyone like really just constantly talks about. Oh, you're so bonded to them. You're so bonded to them. And so it kind of freaks me out. I was like, something wrong with me. I started feeling super depressed and down. I felt like, wow, like this is not my normal life. Like my life is over is what I thought, now hindsight 2020, I know that that's not true, but in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is really hard. And so I started researching postpartum depression and, I saw a lot on the baby blues, which there's a difference. So the baby blues last only a couple of weeks. It's pretty common. It's just where your hormones are going crazy and you're just really sad. I think I probably had baby blues and then I think a little bit of postpartum depression and anxiety. But for me, I know it can last months. For me, it started to clear up. I did up my medication, which we're going to talk about in another episode, but that did help me a lot. It was probably around week 6 that I started feeling a little bit more like myself. I was getting in a routine. I didn't feel as depressed and as anxious, but definitely those first 6 weeks were really rough. I would check on her all the time. I was so scared something was going to happen to her. I constantly cried because I felt like Brad and I's relationship would never be the same because now there's a baby here and she's requiring all my attention. So I would cry all the time thinking that was over. I was constantly scared that I was gonna drop her or that we were doing something wrong. I remember the first night we brought her home, she was making noises and I literally started crying and Brad's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know. Is this like normal? Like, is she supposed to make noises like that? Is she dying? Like, I mean, the postpartum anxiety was real. And so I just really wanted to talk about it because I think that it's something that people don't really talk about. I researched it, but I had really never heard any of my friends talk about postpartum depression or anxiety. I did have one friend that did talk to me a little bit about it, which was helpful. But nobody really went into depth of how dark and lonely it can get after you have a baby. And so it's something that I really wanted to use my platform that I was already using to talk about mental health to now talk a little bit about postpartum. I had posted some statistics. So approximately 1 in 10 women experience postpartum depression, and other research has shown actually 1 in 7 will experience postpartum depression. 50% of mothers with postpartum depression are actually never diagnosed by a doctor, which is scary, because I think that because it's not talked about, women don't know what's going on and they don't know how to seek help. Luckily, because I have been in therapy my whole life, I've been on meds, I knew what signs to look for. I knew when to call my doctor. I knew when to ask for help. But unfortunately, there's so many women that don't. And so if you're watching this, I want you to know that if you are dealing with anxiety, depression, if you feel like everything's dark and lonely and your life's never going to be the same, and you can't get out of bed, and their cry makes you anxious, all of those things are very normal. Those are very normal postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression thoughts. For postpartum OCD, it could be thoughts: what if I drop her? What if, or him? What if I accidentally hurt them? What if they die? What if I'm sleeping and I don't hear them cry? And then you start getting all of these what ifs, and it becomes so overwhelming that you just get so anxious. So that would be a mixture of the postpartum anxiety, but the postpartum OCD is where you're getting intrusive thoughts and you can't stop thinking about it. What if I hurt the baby? What if I'm cooking and this knife slips and accidentally cuts them? Just very obscure thoughts, but they're things that you all of a sudden start obsessing over. So you start avoiding things. You start avoiding cooking. You start avoiding walking down the stairs with them because you're scared you're gonna trip. Those are avoidances that happen in OCD, which I talk about in some of my other videos as far as exposure therapy. So postpartum OCD, anxiety, and depression are a real thing, and truly I think they're a lot more common than we think. When I started reaching out to my girlfriends that have been through postpartum, every single one of them said that they had felt these feelings before, that they had felt sadness, loneliness, depression, not feeling bonded to their baby, obsessive thoughts, even suicidal thoughts. Not that you would do it, but these just thoughts that come in your head and you're just like, what is going on? You have to realize that your hormones are all over the place, up, down, all around, and your brain is just going a million miles a minute. And so it is very common for you to have unwanted thoughts, scary thoughts, anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. Now, it may be normal, but you don't have to live like that. And that's what I'm here to say, is that you need to get help. You need to reach out to your OB. They can prescribe you medicine. You need to reach out to a psychiatrist. They can prescribe you medicine. You need to see a therapist. You need to talk to someone. Be honest. Be honest with your partner. That's the biggest thing. I had to constantly tell Brad what was going on and how I was feeling. So be honest with your partner, be honest with your friends, and you'll see that there's so much support out there. And again, in the next video, part 2, I'm gonna talk about some of the ways that I coped and what helped me with postpartum depression and anxiety. I just want to give you some hope. Another statistic that I had posted yesterday, or I think 2 days ago, was that 80% of women with postpartum depression will achieve full recovery. So there is hope. 80% will receive full recovery. And unfortunately, OCD, anxiety, and depression are things that I have dealt with prior to pregnancy. And so I don't feel that it's going to go completely away, but I do know that there is hope. I know that there's help. And I know that there's medication that can help me as well, which I am going to do another episode on medication while being pregnant, those types of things. So I just want to encourage you, if you are struggling with postpartum, the postpartum journey, if you're about to go into postpartum, if you are 8 months pregnant, 9 months pregnant, I would just say be prepared. Prepare your mind that postpartum is not perfect. Your body's not going to be perfect. You're still going to be in pain. You may feel sad. You may feel depressed, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It gets better. It gets easier. And with help, with encouragement, with love, with prayer, you can get through it. And so I just wanted to lay that out for you guys there today. I wanted to share my experience with postpartum anxiety, depression, and OCD. And I wanted to share because I want you guys to know that there is hope. And if you need someone to talk to, please reach out to me. I can always give you some resources. If you live in Arizona, I can give you some local places that you can reach out to as far as medication or therapy, exposure therapy. But I am here to help, and I want you to know that there is hope for postpartum, and you will get through this season. I can promise you that. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for part 2.